Welcome to Lake County, home of California's largest natural freshwater lake.
Originally referred to as Habatin, meaning big water in native Pomo,
Is now known as Clear Lake.
Clear Lake receives most of its replenishing water from creeks, streams, and stormwater.
Stormwater is collected in storm drains, which are a part of a system that moves water from streets, gutters, and ditches into Clear Lake.
Storm drains do not flow to treatment plants, meaning that any trash, garbage, sediments, motor oil, or other pollutants flow directly into creeks, streams, and into Clear Lake.
Once trash or pollutants enter Clear Lake from storm drains, they are very difficult to remove, and most will remain in the lake forever.
Keep storm drain systems clean and pollution-free, and remember,
Only rain down the storm drain. If you have questions about stormwater,
you can call us at
Water Resources, 707-263-2344.
or visit us at our website.
Okay, so this is just an audio check here for Water Quality Wednesday. It is 6 p.m. We'll get started here. Thank you for those of us that are attending here in Zoom. We also have this going out onto the County of Lake Facebook page. It'll be streaming. We also will have it going out on the County of Lake YouTube. There is a little lag between this live broadcast and when it goes out to the YouTube channel. And then we also have it on local PEG TV, Mediacom Channel 8. So I just want to make sure that the audio right now that I'm talking, you can hear that, and that we are ready for Water Quality Wednesday, July 6th, 2022. There was a little scratching, but I think it went away there. Okay. At any time for any of the attendees that are in the Zoom room, if you hear any audio issues, at the bottom of your page or the screen is a little chat box. You can click on that, and that'll send a message directly to myself and my team, and letting us know about that audio. So, all right. Okay. Now I have my video going, and I am sharing my screen. So it's the Water Quality Wednesday flyer, and I'm going to be changing here to a welcome screen. So I just want to make sure that that is visible here. Okay, so welcome to Water Quality Wednesday. Today is going to be all about shorelines. My name is Angela DePalma Dow. I am a program coordinator at Water Resource Department, also the Watershed Protection District. And I also write a column in Lake County News called Lady of the Lake. So I'm going to be doing your introduction today. And we'll have a few minutes before we get started on the meat of this presentation about shorelines. Some reminders today, we are in a Zoom webinar. We will have a question and answer period at the end of each presentation. If there's questions or comments about what the presenters had talked about, that's your opportunity to bring that up. You can enter questions throughout the presentations in the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom. You can also add questions if you're watching this on stream Facebook. Again, there's a lag at the County of Lake Facebook page for the stream, but I will be monitoring that throughout the evening. So if there's some questions, we can get to them at the end of the presentations today. So we'll have questions answered for each presentation. We'll have one, a longer one at the end. This meeting is being recorded, so it's going to be on our website. And again, it'll be on the YouTube channel, so we'll embed that there. And it's also shared on our Facebook page for Water Resources at Lake County Water. And at the end, we're going to put an evaluation link into the chat box. So you guys can tell us how we did, if there's ways that we can improve Water Quality Wednesday, if there's future Water Quality Wednesdays you want to learn about. You could also, we have had other Water Quality Wednesdays in the past. So if you have any comments about this event, you can put them there so we can improve and make this event more accessible and easy to attend. And I just want to give a big shout out to the tech guys that are helping us out today, Matthew Rothstein, Jay Grinke, and Sam Houston, for putting on the tech for us and allowing us to have this event, staying after hours today on a Wednesday to do that. So thank you guys. So Water Quality Wednesdays are open, accessible forum to share information. And that's because there is a lot that is currently going on out there in the lake. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of management going on. We want to make sure that we're being transparent and showing folks what's out there, and that we can get the feedback if people have questions or concern. This is one of the forums that we can do that. And the goal is really to demystify lake and water science. We want to make sure that we're talking about the people, the places, the programs, and the projects that are going on the lake for all of these lake and water programs. And we all play an important part in protecting valuable aquatic systems. We all contribute to our lake, both good and bad ways. And this is one of the ways that we learn about those things and what we can do and what we should do to help protect our lake and our valuable resource. And I want to acknowledge native Pomo. There's many tribes of Pomo that lived here long, long ago and for a long time, and they're indigenous original caretakers of the lake and the shorelines. And we just want to acknowledge them and these native lands. And if you might have heard of Lupiomo, which is the creation story for Mount Canocti and some of the geography here around the lake. But Clear Lake is originally known, native Pomo, as Big Water, pronounced Hokasa or Habitin. And Pomo have a really strong relationship with the shorelines, particularly their use of tules that are staple along the shorelines in Clear Lake. And we'll talk a little bit later tonight about the Tule Festival that's coming back. And so that's a great event that'll be happening later in the month in July, where you can attend and learn about living shorelines in action. So gentle reminders about today. Again, we're talking about shorelines. Shorelines are living, breathing things. They connect the land to the water, and the land has impacts on shorelines. So what happens on the land runs down, can impact the shorelines. Shorelines have a direct impact to water quality in the water, in the lake. And so therefore land impacts water quality, and the gap that bridges these together is the shoreline. So shorelines are really, really important for us when we look at water quality in the lake and how the land is interacting with the lake. Therefore, healthy and sustainable shoreline management is key to improving water quality in Clear Lake. And I think that's a goal for all of us. If we like to recreate in the lake, we drink water from the lake, we really want to see that water quality improving. And one way we can do that is by having healthy and sustainable shorelines. And for us at Water Resources, we use data and science to guide the management so we can better improve this resource from the land to the shorelines and to the water quality. So just some friendly reminders. This is very broad scope for shorelines, and our speakers will get into this a little bit deeper. So speaking of our speakers, our first one today will be Emma Belanger, and she's AmeriCorps Civic Spark Fellow, currently with Water Resource Department. And she's been here, she's on 11-month tenure here in our department. She has about another month and a half, 2 months to go. And then she's going to be going to grad school at University of Washington in education. So really excited for Emma. We're glad she got to be here, learn about our lake, and she's going to share some of that with you. And then our next speaker is William Fox. He is our Lakebed Manager, our Lakebed Coordinator here in Water Resource. He's been here about 2 years. He's native to Atlanta, Georgia, but he came out to visit Clear Lake. He fell in love with it, and we're so happy that he's here to work with us and share with us what he's doing with Lakebed Management. So that is what we have. I'm going to stop my share here, and I'm going to give it over to our first speaker, Emma. Great.
Awesome.
Okay, I can see your video, so let's make sure you can share.
Cool. How's that look?
There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go up.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. As Angela said, I'm Emma Belanger. I'm the Civic Spark Fellow here serving with Lake County Water Resources. All of my projects look at the shoreline of Clear Lake, so I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you all, share what I've learned so far, and where we're looking to go in the future. So as many of you probably know, Clear Lake shoreline is not in its most natural state. Over the last several decades, the shoreline of Clear Lake has been substantially developed. A lot of homes and businesses have found their way on the shorelines of Clear Lake, which is great. We all love the lake. We all love recreating on the lake. We like fishing. We like looking at it. We like being on it and being close to it. And that's great. But with the development comes the loss of a lot of natural shoreline features, and that does have some consequences for water quality and Clear Lake as an ecosystem. So, as Angela also described, a lack of natural shorelines can contribute to decreased water quality, and there's a few ways this can happen. One is when there's native natural vegetation along the shoreline. It provides a natural buffer system to any runoff. Any pollutants that might be entering the water will first go through the filtration system of the plants that are on the shoreline, and they'll get those filtered out before they enter the water. But also, of course, vegetation and a natural rocky shoreline can provide natural habitat for wildlife and fish, and also increase the aesthetics around the lake. This, I think, is a really good visualization of how vegetation can help prevent erosion. So in this video, we can see the shoreline has some vegetation. There's a little fish there. The wave energy is breaking on the vegetation, and it's not affecting the land too much. And then when you compare that with this video where there's no vegetation, you can see the wave energy is breaking right on the shoreline there. You're starting to see some erosion. You're seeing the sediments of the lake bed starting to come up, get a little turbulent down there, which all contributes to more erosion along the shoreline. And while erosion is bad because you're losing land to the water, you're also having more nutrients enter the water, which Clear Lake does not need. Clear Lake is a very naturally nutrient-dense lake, which can contribute to harmful algal blooms and also nuisance weeds. So preventing erosion helps water quality as well. So Lake County Water Resources was really interested in improving our shorelines along Clear Lake and doing a better job at managing them. And the first step in that was figuring out what exactly is happening on the shoreline. So to do that, we implemented a process called Score the Shore. This was originally developed in Michigan with the same purpose of getting an ecological assessment of residential lakes. So the process aims to delineate the shoreline and give it a score. So the shoreline is broken up into easy 1,000-foot sections, and there's a survey that's filled out for each transect. The scores are mostly affected by vegetation, hard structures, woody debris, and erosion. And I just wanted to go through a really quick example of how one might score the shore to give you an idea of what the score is most affected by. So here we can see this shoreline is very natural, not too much is going on. It's pretty easy to score. We see that there's a big unmowed vegetation belt, which looks at any vegetation landward of the shoreline. So any trees or shrubs or things like that. It's very deep. There's not much going on there. We also have a lot of tules, which are counted as emergent vegetation. On Clear Lake, tules are really important. They're a native shoreline plant that provides tons of benefits to the lake and provides habitat. So we are really interested in seeing where tules were around the lake. This shoreline here has a lot of tules, which is great. There's also not any hardened structures. There's no impervious surfaces. There's no docks or houses. So this gets a really high score, a 92 out of 100. And the only thing that would bring it down is there's not much woody debris, which is another type of habitat, but 92 is basically as high as you can get. And then I also wanted to compare that to a more complicated shoreline because of course a lot of the shoreline of Clear Lake is developed. So here, this is a shoreline with more houses and docks and things going on. So when we get to a shoreline like this, first we'll count the houses and docks, which actually don't affect the score. I'll talk about that in a second, but we are really interested in counting those as well. They'll be used in a separate calculation. Then we see that there's not really any tules along the shoreline, not too much going on here. There's some trees over here, but again, not too much vegetation landward of the shoreline. We also see some plant management. It looks like this person is aiming to get rid of their little weeds. They're popping up on their lake bed. And we also do have a lot of impervious surfaces right against the shoreline, which again just means that any water that's hitting those surfaces will run off straight into the lake instead of getting filtered down into the soil. Then we look at artificial structures. So first we see here a sloped artificial, which seems to be a boat ramp or something like that. And then we also have vertical artificial, which is mainly like seawalls or rock walls, things that are straight up and down, kind of forming a barrier between the lake and the land. And finally, this would get an overall score of about 32, which isn't great, but I do want to remind you that the transects we're looking at are much bigger than just a few houses. So while it definitely matters what individuals are doing on their shorelines, Score the Short looks specifically at a more broader picture, giving us insight in what's happening regionally or in specific areas. So the first step in implementing this was dividing up the shoreline into 353 different transects. There's 17 different regions that were identified as being unique, having unique development along their shorelines, and maybe they encapsulate a city, or maybe they just look at the state park, something like that. And this gives an overall picture of the data that we got. And the first thing I want to point out is there's a lot of green, which are good scores. The higher the scores, the better. The average score is about 66.3. So we can all celebrate that we're not doing anything horribly wrong. There's a lot of good things happening on the shoreline in Clear Lake. And of course, there are areas that are more red, more orange with lower scores. But again, that is to be expected on a developed shoreline. I don't want to go too in depth on this regional data, but I did just want to give everyone a glance of what our data can look like. And I also wanted to talk about developmental density, which is the calculation that we use with the houses and docks. So we add up the number of houses and docks that we saw in a region, and you divide that by the number of transects per region, and that gives you the average structures per transect. So that's really important for us to compare, especially with our average scores. Because the scores aren't affected by the developmental density, we can see that there is a relationship still despite that. So there's a pretty strong correlation between the two, which indicates that degraded shorelines and developed areas are reliably found together, again highlighting how important it is for homeowners and businesses to take action to improve the health of their shorelines. Which brings me to my next point. And this is a program that's in development. There's not a ton out about it now. This is a long-term goal of the department to get this program up and running. So I just wanted to mention it to have everyone keep their eyes out for all of the great stuff that will come from this program in the coming years. So a shoreline stewardship program of Clear Lake aims to restore the vital natural shorelines in the area where development has reduced them, support projects that provide habitat and ecosystem services, bolster the resiliency of Clear Lake's shoreline against erosion and degradation, enhance a sense of community around a common goal and shared knowledge, and provide economic incentives for participants. So again, this is something that will be in development. There'll be outreach materials just to provide everyone with information about what to do on your shorelines, what not to do on your shorelines, ways you can implement a natural shoreline if you're interested in planting tules or getting some good vegetation along your shoreline where you maybe don't have any. This is one way that you can hopefully do it in the future. And I just wanted to highlight some cool properties that we've seen while doing this process. It's always really exciting to see developed areas that are doing really well, which is not to say that properties that aren't there yet are doing anything wrong. We're all learning, and that is why we're so interested in creating this program and getting this data and just helping everyone help Clear Lake. So this house here you can see has a really unique slope with a lot of vegetation. landward of the shoreline, and they also have a lot of tules. And even though they do have a seawall or other things that might count against them, having this vegetation on both sides of the shoreline really helps and makes a difference, not only for Score the Shore, but again, also by providing habitat and ecosystem services, by being a buffer system, and yeah, just providing some nice green space for the lake. And you can see they still have their dock, they still have their areas to recreate. They're not giving up anything, they have their view. So it is possible to have a natural shoreline and everything else that comes with living on the lake. And up here is another really good example. Again, you can see they do have a seawall. They don't maybe have as much vegetation landward, but they have a bunch of tules, which are so important and really great. And again, they have their dock, they have their space. So it's all about having a good balance of what the lake needs and what you need from your property. And I also wanted to point out that there are a lot of different shoreline types that can be found around Clear Lake. Some areas have a really rocky substrate that doesn't really support so much emergent vegetation. There's not a lot of tules, and some people might live in areas where tules don't really naturally occur. So it's sometimes hard to tell exactly what type of natural shoreline might be the best for exactly where property owners are. But yeah, there are a lot of different things you can do that help support the natural shoreline program. So that is all I have prepared today, but again, I'm happy to take questions. We have some time now, and we'll have some time after too.
Thank you, Emma. That was a great presentation. And I just really appreciate that you put all that information together and, took a broad look at it and then narrowed down and looked at some examples. Right now, we don't have the Shoreline Stewards Program in place, but is there something that folks can do like now, maybe this summer, to maybe kind of help encourage natural shorelines or kind of look around or something that they can do themselves to kind of help start the process as they want and as we build toward the future of getting systems in place that can really help transform some of these shorelines?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a great place to start is the learning process, and we will soon have some resources on the webpage for that. We'll have some links to resources that are from all around the country, all aimed at promoting and supporting natural shorelines. And the first step to anything really is learning about it and getting a good handle on it. And I think also changing our mindsets. I think historically, people who live on the lake, or like a big draw of living on the lake is like having your own beach or having like a clean, pristine shoreline with no weeds or nothing on it. So I think just reimagining what a shoreline can be is an important first step of getting you mentally prepared and excited about changing your shoreline. If you so happen, also, if you do already have tules or other vegetation on your shoreline, not getting rid of those, but helping support them. And yeah, just being mindful of how you're using your shoreline and yeah, just getting ready to start the process. Great,
thanks. So I do have a question in the comment box. So this is from an Ian. As a Michigander originally, I know shoreline infrastructure is really important to the state. With regards to new shoreline stewardship programs, so the one that you were talking about, do you know of any existing models for shoreline restoration for more lake-dense states that the department is looking at or looking for?
Yeah, so we did look a lot at Michigan. A lot of the things that we're hoping to create with the Shoreline Stewards Program are inspired by a lot of the resources that Michigan has. So we look a lot at, it's called Michigan Natural Shorelines Partnership. They have a ton of resources and a ton of really cool things for people who live on lakes to interact with. And the nice thing about the program we're hoping to create and all of the work that we're doing right now is we get to focus really specifically on Clear Lake, where Michigan, they have tons of lakes and tons of stuff going on. So we can get really specific with our unique lake system here in Clear Lake and all of the things that makes Clear Lake its beautiful self.
Great, thank you. So that's all the questions I have. Oh, I just got, yep, okay. He liked that answer, thank you. That's all the questions I have right now. The one other question I had before we go to Will's transition is, we are a fishing destination. So we were just, in 2020, we were voted the best bass fishing lake of the decade. And then every year we get at least in the top 10, and then many years we get the top 4 or 5 for fishing lakes, and people come from all over the country to come fish our lake. What is the importance of shoreline with fish habitat? And what are some things that you see with the program that will be starting going into the future that will be able to encourage or enrich the fish habitat, as also with preventing erosion and preserving shorelines, like how all the benefits, even though that benefit fish, but also can have multi-benefits too?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with any shoreline that's in the lake, any vegetation that's on the shoreline and in the lake is great fish habitat, especially native plants. So that's one of the reasons why we're so interested in looking at tules. Tules provide fish habitat, and while you see a lot of the tule sticking out of the water, there's also a lot of the tule that is in the water, under the water, and that provides a really good space for fish to hide, possibly lay eggs. Maybe they're predators and they can sneak up on other fish in there. And then there's also woody debris, which is something else that Score the Shore looked at. So that would be like large sticks or even downed trees that are partially in the water or fully submerged in the water. That is really important fish habitat. There's actually been a lot of studies done looking at how many different species of fish rely on woody debris for either breeding grounds or juvenile fish will live there for a period of their lives, or larger fish again can hide in there, or predators can sneak up on others. So having fish habitat is a very natural part of a shoreline that maybe a lot of developed shorelines don't have so much of. So hopefully by implementing this program and giving people the resources and tools they need to have more vegetation or to put woody debris on their property, we can also increase fish habitat. And yeah, just encourage that part of our economy and what makes Lake County so special.
Thanks, Emma. Okay, let's switch over to Will now. And again, if you have any questions for Emma that pop up, you can still go ahead and put them in the chat. We can answer them at the end of the second presentation. And we can also take any questions. I've been monitoring the Facebook. So if you've been putting questions in the Facebook comments, we can also take those. And if you're watching this as a recording, you can still put questions in the Facebook comments and we can respond to those. Water Resources has a Facebook page at Lake County Water. So we can always come back and answer any questions you have if you're watching this on a recording, or you can send us a direct message too about this talk. So we did have one more question, and Will, while you're getting set up, great, asking about primrose versus the tules. So primrose are an invasive, they're called creeping water primrose. They're bright green. You probably see them now out there. They have big yellow flowers. And they can actually grow so dense that they actually limit fish movement and other wildlife movement. So there's areas on the lake where we'll see primrose where we won't have wildlife. And then when the primrose kind of fades and you move into tules or some other native vegetation, you'll actually see more wildlife like fish and waterfowl using the lake. Will, go ahead and switch. You're still in presentation mode. So that's the difference. Primrose, there is a native primrose to California. We don't see it. It's got over competed by the invasive primrose that's from South America. So that is an issue with that plant. And the tules seem to be really resistant to primrose, but eventually it'll take them over and they won't be able to grow out along the shoreline. So our department is simultaneously with the shoreline program that Emma was talking about, also looking for a primrose management plan for the lake so we can have more native vegetation for our shorelines and for our fish populations. And I did want to mention, when I talk about fish, I don't just mean all our game fish, but also some of our native fish like our Clear Lake hitch too are important. So all these programs benefit those species. All right, so we'll go into William Fox. Thank you, Will. This looks great. And I'll go ahead and let you take it. Let's make sure we can hear you.
All right, can you hear me all right?
Yes, and I just want to make sure your screen, I can see it. Yep. Okay. And then I'll let you know if there's any issues on the other end, the tech end. Great.
Cool. All right. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is William Fox. I'm a Water Resources Program Coordinator with Lake County Water Resources, or the Watershed Protection District. And today on this wonderful Water Quality Wednesday, we're going to be talking a little bit about lakebed management on Clear Lake. And before I jump into it, I'd like to just acknowledge that I have two seals on this opening slide, the County of Lake seal and then the State Lands Commission seal. And that's because Clear Lake was originally granted to the county back in 1973. And the California State Lands Commission is the entity that's in charge with reviewing how the county manages Clear Lake and making sure that the way that we manage it is within the public statewide interests. All right, so getting back to it, so Chapter 639 is from the Public Trust Doctrine, and it's, like I said, it's where the state conveyed the submerged lands of Clear Lake to the county for the furtherance of navigation, commerce, fisheries, and to provide government management. Those uses have expanded over time to include others like protecting habitat and some other uses that have been expanded upon that we now use the lake for. So first, I kind of wanted to run through how land is broken out around Clear Lake. So we have public trust lands, we have a public trust easement, and then we have private property. So all land that is lakeward of 0 Rumsey, which is this blue line here, which is also the low water mark of Clear Lake, is considered public trust lands. So public trust lands are lands that are owned, that had been granted to the county, and now the county manages them for those services and public trust interests such as recreation, commerce, fisheries. So everybody that has a structure lakeward of the 0 Rumsey line gets billed annually for their encroachment upon state lands. So these two parcels to the left of this both have structures that are lakeward of that 0 Rumsey line. So every year they pay a fee based on their square foot encroachment upon those public trust lands. Now, the second type of land is considered a public trust easement. And now that's the land between the high water mark, which is 779 Rumsey, 7.79 Rumsey, and then the low water mark, which is 0 Rumsey. So although that's private property, it's overlaid with a public trust easement. And so that really means that those uses that the owner can do on that land are very restricted. So they can't restrict access for recreation. They can't stop people from fishing on that land. And a lot of their uses are really restricted. They have to get a permit from our department for almost every activity, construction, anything that would be considered significant. And then any land that's landward of that high water mark, so anything above 779 Rumsey, is considered private property. And we're not involved in any projects on private property unless it has the potential to impact the public trust lands of Clear Lake. So, and kind of diving deeper into lakebed permitting. So we have a shoreline ordinance, and that's Chapter 23 of the Lake County Code called Clear Lake Shoreline. This was enacted back in 1976, so 3 years after the state granted the submerged lands of Clear Lake back to the county. We adopted this Clear Lake Shoreline Ordinance to really manage the different activities that occurred on the shoreline of the lake. And then there's a slip about when a permit is required. And then there's this kind of catch-all phrase that's used in that, so I'll read it to you. Any use or operation or activity with significant impact on the public trust purposes of commerce, navigation, recreation, and fisheries. So this statement really gives the county the discretionary authority to deem an action significant or non-significant within the shoreline of Clear Lake. So below here are different instances where we found people and we had to pursue violations based on different actions that would have required a permit. So in the bottom right there, the placement of a pier or dock within the public trust lands of Clear Lake. In the middle, we have fill. So material was placed lakeward of that high water mark. And you can see there we're using an engineer's rod to determine where the high water mark would be on somebody's property to see if that fill was placed lakeward of that high water mark. And then in the far left there, we have some grading activities that we had to pursue. And this kind of all rolls back into why we're permitting. So we're really trying to protect the natural resources of Clear Lake for the public. So through this permitting process, we try to curb these activities, try to implement best management practices, and really protect the resource for all public uses to the benefit of the community. So I get this question a lot. I pay an annual lease, I pay permit fees. Where does this money go to? So annually, we collect about $235,000 from lease fees and permit fees. We get around $200,000 from the lease fees. So like I said, if you have a structure lakeward of 0 Rumsey, then you pay an annual fee based on that square foot encroachment upon those public trust lands. And so about 200,000 of that comes from the lease payments, and then we get about $30,000 a year from permit fees. So if you're going to do a new construction on the lake, or you're going to be modifying your existing structure, then you need a permit from our department, and those fees again go back into allowing us to process these permits and do some of these other activities that I'll dive into. So $175,000 of that goes to our wages, to our staff time. So we have around 10 staff in our department, and whenever they're working on programs or projects related to Lakebed Management, they charge that program. And so we have about $175,000 allocated annually for that work. Then we have around $50,000 a year that goes towards water quality monitoring. So once a month in each section of the arm, so the upper arm, the lower arm, and the Oaks arm, we sample for a bunch of different analytes on the lake. And that information is uploaded to 2 different portals online, so any members of the public can access that information. It's on WQX, or the Water Quality Exchange, and then CDIN, which is the California Environmental Data Exchange Network. So you can find our water quality data uploaded there. And again, we do that monthly in 3 different areas of the lake. And then lastly, we have about $10,000 a year, which we use for purchasing buoys, chain, anchors, navigation lights. And we also work to toss those buoys out and make sure that people are boating and recreating safely. So diving a little deeper into the permitting process, people are probably, if they got a permit to build their dock maybe 10 or 20 years ago, things have changed a lot, and they might be overwhelmed with the regulations that people have to go through now for new construction. And a lot of people might not realize, but we have a listed threatened species of fish in our lake, and that's called the Clear Lake hitch. So back in 2014, the species was listed under CISA, which is the California Endangered Species Act. And through California Fish and Wildlife, they implemented this policy that construction on Clear Lake shall be limited to a work window of October 15th to December 31st. And this work window is really implemented to avoid negative impacts to the Clear Lake hitch. And so it's really based on their life cycle. So I'll run you through it. So in January, adults are pre-spawning on the shoreline. Through March through May, they start moving up into the streams along the shoreline. They lay their eggs, and then the fry and larvae move down back to the lake. They start schooling on the shoreline for the next couple months until they grow big enough, and then they move into the deeper waters in the lake around October time. And then from October to the December 31st, the hitch are most commonly found in the deeper parts of the lake. So that's why they've allowed construction to occur within that work window, because you're avoiding most of the hitch being around the shoreline. And then going into that, Emma spoke about this a little bit, but I'll touch on it a little bit, because tules are protected under our Chapter 23 Clear Lake Shoreline Ordinance. And Emma got into a bunch of some of the reasons why we want to protect tules, but I think each of these photos kind of provides a different rationale on why. These plants are really the filters of our lake, and we're working to really encourage private property management, in a sense, to be stewards of the lake. Private property owners who have shoreline property have a real responsibility. You sign a lakebed lease, and that lakebed lease has certain responsibilities outlined in it. And so we're really trying to encourage landowners to really be stewards of their land because it is a common shared resource. So we don't want to allow one landowner to cause resource damage to a publicly owned resource. So in the top left, we see somebody fishing in the Tules, and Emma spoke about how this is habitat for fish. It's very, very great habitat for the threatened species of fish, the Clear Lake hitch. They're known to school and hide in here from the predatory fish. Like I said, they're also the filters of the lake. They provide habitat for our migratory and resident bird species. Emma explained a little bit more about how Tules protect our properties. They actually protect infrastructure. They reduce wave action that seawalls face, and they really extend the life of your seawall. So having this is really protecting a huge investment. And then on the bottom, it's a hugely culturally significant resource to our indigenous Pomo communities, which Angela spoke on a little bit. Our indigenous communities use the Tules for creating these Tule boats. They create Tule baskets, Tule huts. They were really engineers of using this resource to create a lot of diverse uses and tools. And we want to allow our indigenous communities to continue their cultural practices and have enough abundant Tules to continue this use. Now, kind of diving into it, everybody is really apparent, and you can't not acknowledge that we're in a serious drought right now. And so based on that, we had this on our website last year, and I'll blow it up a little bit more. But this is an estimation of what our lake level is going to be like. And so you can see on May 29th, it was just under 0 Rumsey, so we were just barely negative. By July 15th, we're estimating we'll be at around -1 Rumsey. At the end of August, around -2 Rumsey. And this is really important when we think about recreating on Clear Lake and then managing your shoreline as well, because many property owners think when the lake level is very low, your property is increasing. But if you look back to one of the first slides I was talking about, you have to be really cognizant of where your property line is changing from public trust easement. And so we really want to make sure that when we're managing our land, we're managing it for those public interests, and we're not creating beach habitat, we're not creating an artificial shoreline which won't benefit the lake. And so we're seeing a lot of this lately with the increased shoreline as people are taking it upon themselves to do work without permits. So we really want to curb this activity and encourage people to get permits when they're doing work on the shoreline. We're out there processing violations and trying to curb these activities and encourage, if you're a new landowner and you're not aware of this, or if you just haven't constructed on the lake before, we do have a strict permitting process that we abide by, again, to protect our public trust lands. And the State Lands Commission is the review authority, so we want to make sure that we're actually implementing these policies correctly. And on the right here, I just provided a list of the public boat launch ramps and the end of the depth at the end of the ramp. And so I wanted to say that these ramps are managed by the Parks Department, but we like to provide this information. It's on the AIDS navigation page on our website. Last year, we saw every single ramp close except the 5th Street ramp and the Oaks ramp. And we anticipate a pretty similar year to last year. So we want to let folks know that this information is on our website, and we're going to try to keep up to date with letting the status of our ramps know. And again, just want to make sure everybody is aware of being a steward on your property and making sure that you're getting the correct permits from our department and some of the other departments before you're going to be doing any lake bed alteration. Now, going into drought considerations, like I said, many people think that they have a larger shoreline now. And so that's great. And you might be seeing a lot of different plant species now popping out on your shoreline. And so this program is managed by Angela, but I'm going to be taking it over briefly while she's on maternity leave. And so on the right here, you'll see these are some willows. This is a really common plant species we're seeing kind of occupy this space in the shoreline. They're normally a terrestrial plant, but because the shoreline has receded so much in the past couple of years, This plant has really taken this vacant space and populated it. And so we want to allow landowners to still be able to recreate. So if this plant species, which is normally protected under our ordinance, like tules are, then we will allow landowners to remove these if they get an aquatic plant management permit, and that these plant species are posing a navigation hazard. You can't access your boat ramp, you can't access your dock, your pier. So definitely send some pictures into us so we can adequately address the situation and deem whether these willows on your property can be removed manually. And then I'll touch on the herbicide application. So herbicide application is charged a cent per square foot, but can only be applied by a certified applicator. There's 2 companies that are currently certified to apply on our lake, and over-the-counter chemicals like Roundup and Monterey are not allowed. And they should only be used on aquatic creeping primrose. Angela, did you want to touch on this at all? Because I know that this is your program in particular.
Oh, thanks for asking, Will. No, but we're getting a lot of these calls. This is a common thing right now. When there's plants that are aquatic or riparian, we have to go through the requirements of our permits and our ordinances because we are beholden to State Lands Commission. And if they find out that we're, letting all sorts of activities go on, even when it's a drought, we could still get in trouble by them. One of the things that's happening right now around the lake is there's a lot of terrestrial weeds coming in. So star thistles, some sorrels, there's lots of things that are coming in that are definitely not aquatic. So they're not covered. It's kind of that gray area. They're not covered under our plant, aquatic plant ordinance. So that's why we're requiring photos so we can give some direction. If you are managing creeping water primrose or another aquatic on your shoreline without a permit, that is a violation of the ordinance. It is against the law. And again, to do manual work, like Will said, is only $50. And if you take a photo and send it to us, we can let you know if you're going to need one of those. So everybody's doing everything according to the law and the ordinance. And you're doing it the right way and the best way. So you actually can solve the problem of getting rid of the plants in the right way. So you'll be able to enjoy the shoreline when the water comes back. I think that was about it. I think I repeated some of what you said and just clarified because we are getting tons of questions about this. It's all over the lake right now. So thanks, Will.
Yeah. So I'll move on here. So we have this survey on our website. It's also at the kiosks at all of the boat ramps. This is to identify boating hazards that you might have found, whether it's a piling sticking out of the water, a pipe sticking out of the water, a unmarked rock, or even a floating abandoned boat. Please fill this survey out. Note the location. This is really, really helpful for us. It also tracks the history of if we're seeing more hazards in certain locations. And this is really helpful because I use this information to toss buoys out. And it's really difficult for me to actually find a hazard if I'm just given street directions or marker directions, and the water quality is not great in the summer, as like the visibility, I mean. So it's really difficult for us to find the hazard other than using this survey. So this survey will capture either your current location or you can mark it on the map if you're not out on the lake. But if you are out on the lake and right there and then you see a hazard, you can fill this out on your phone, on your smartphone. It works really well, and capture your current location. And then I can toss out a buoy next time I check the survey submissions. And so, like I was saying, this kind of ties into another program that we have, SAVA, which is the Surrendered and Abandoned Vessel Abatement Program. This program was funded through cannabis tax internal grant funds from the county. And so there's lots of abandoned ghost ships that float around that don't have a property owner anymore, don't have CF numbers anymore, don't have an engine, maybe filled with trash. We see these floating around the shoreline every so often. And through these funds and our contractor all-in-one towing, we're able to remove these vessels and properly dispose of them. So definitely fill out that survey, like I said, if you see any of these floating around the lake, and we'll be able to get them out. And then another program which the county funded, and then we got match from the Blue Ribbon Committee, is the abatement of dilapidated lakebed structures. This is a program that I started when I was onboarded. And so we had these two different funding entities, the Blue Ribbon Committee, they pitched in $250,000 and the county pitched in $70,000. And so I work with landowners, notify them if the structure's not being maintained in a safe and proper manner, try to work with them, give them plenty of time to remedy the situation. If they're unwilling or able to, we secure the correct authorization to allow our contractors to be on site and abate the structure and return the land to a natural state. So again, this program is in its infancy. We've only removed this one structure so far. We're working on our second one currently. But again, the county and the Blue Ribbon Committee invested in this program to clean up the shoreline of Clear Lake and to steward the land once again. And right now, I'll just close out with my contact information. So again, thank you so much for tuning in and having us here for this Water Quality Wednesday. Really appreciate any questions that came in and can definitely answer them now if there is any, Angela.
Great. Thanks, Will. That was informative. So much information. You do a lot for this program. We're so grateful for it. I'm going to leave Will's information up here. If you want to take a screenshot or write it down, if you have any question for Will about his program, feel free to do that. Also, if you're watching this on a recorded, later after the live event recorded, you can also take this information while we go through some questions for you. So we got some that did come in. One is regarding tules planting. So if we're planting tules right now, it's drought. It's pretty dry out there. What's going to happen? Will they survive? What will happen next year if we get a lot of water, we get a flood year or something like that?
So we definitely want to encourage people to plant tules. These are the filters of our lake. We do ask that you notify us beforehand just so we know that people aren't digging into the lake bed and potentially discharging sediment. But as you stated, now isn't the best time to plant tules just because we're in drought. The water will probably recede quite a bit more. So it's definitely best to plant the tules in the fall time so that they can get some good rain and really secure in before the cold wintering. Hopefully we'll get some rain this winter. Anything to add, Angela?
I think you did that. I mean, it's just like when you're planting your garden, there's some specific plants that you want to plant in summer when there's no frost, like vegetables. But in general, tules are one, they really like a lot of water. So planting them in the winter time, the fall is the best time. We're experimenting with some tule replantings around the lake with our department, with some of our project. We're simultaneously removing primrose and then planting tules. And so we did that last year for the first time, and they came back and they're doing great. Even in areas where it's dry, they're growing. We might have to do some supplemental watering. So that's always a consideration, especially as it gets pretty dry and the water level goes down. But if the ground has any moisture in it and the tules are established, they're very used to variable water levels going up and down. Clear Lake went through these cycles naturally for thousands of years before we got here. Water level would go way down and get dry and then come way up and it would flood. And the tules are very adapted to that and love that type of environment. So that's why we need to take care of them and have them around Clear Lake, because they handle that environment and they like it. So I think that supplemented your question. And then I have another one for you, Will. Actually, it was two. So from Betsy's asking about, this is one for Emma. Also the stewardship program that you were referring to, who will it hand off to? What is the future of that? And maybe I can help you answer that one too. And then also the shoreline ordinance, there was a general question about it. Is there any updating, especially considering, changes to climate and lake management and everything you talked about? Is there any updates to that? So let's do the first one for the stewardship program handoff. What does that look like going in the future? Emma, did you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, and you can definitely chime in with anything I forget. But yeah, while I will be finishing up my fellowship in August, I'll be leaving behind tons of resources for another fellow to start actually implementing the program. But that won't start until 2024, right? 2024, 2025. Or 2023, 2024. Yeah. So it will line up with not next year's fellow, but the fellow after that. will, be the one to fully take that program over and start getting that on the ground to the people. And
Yeah, and then the plans for after that is because we do want this program to be long-lasting, a legacy, just like Will talks about doing lakebed activities every year and have been as part of our requirements of lakebed managers. We want to incorporate the shoreline sewage program for the long haul, forever. We want it to be a part of the way that we manage the lake and become part of that lakebed management process. So we're building it now, but the idea is to get it up to capacity and then continue investing in that. We are going before the Blue Ribbon Committee for the rehabilitation of Clear Lake to get sustainable funding for that for 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028 to maintain that and get more folks involved in that. And then hopefully by then we can figure out a county source or work with lakebed fees or some way to have some more internal sustainable funding for that as part of a general lakebed management strategy. Yeah.
And then to touch on the ordinance.
Yep, you can go ahead on that.
Yeah, so we have been working to update the shoreline ordinance for a little over a year now. Our previous Civic Spark, Nicole, started that. And we as a department have been working together to modify the shoreline ordinance because it is outdated and a lot of the terms and uses don't really comply with our current management viewpoint, as well as the State Lands Commission perspective on how to manage the land. So we have been updating that. We definitely would appreciate any feedback or insight or suggested changes and amendments. You can definitely email them to any of our contacts listed here on this slide, and we'll take them in. We're at our closing in on our internal review. It's definitely going to have to go before management and then our legal before it actually gets implemented. But we have been working on updates to that ordinance for a little over a year now.
Thanks, Will. And to follow up that, is there going to be opportunity for the public to be involved or view that ordinance, particularly as many folks that live on the lake might be impacted by those changes?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a public review period, especially once it goes before the board for approval. And so we're really trying to implement a lot of these updates that we've seen to curb a lot of either violations, to allow certain activities for shoreline stewardship, for planting of tules, and for cultural and indigenous uses of the tule in our ordinance update. So we're looking at some of the major things, but definitely try to send us some other suggestions. We know that this ordinance needs an overhaul, so we've been working on that over the past, closing in on 2 years coming up.
Great, thanks. So we have 3 more minutes. I want 2 more minutes of questions, and then I have 1 minute. I'm going to talk about some events coming up that the public might be interested in about shorelines. So we had 2 questions. One is the status of boat ramp extensions, and I can answer that, and Will, you can add anything, but Water Resources does not manage the boat ramps, so we do not do the extensions for that. If you are in a city like Lakeport or Clear Lake, you want to contact your parks department. They are the ones that manage the boat ramps, and they're the ones that would file for an extension and make the planning for that. If you're in the county area, like the Oaks or Lakeside, that would be through Public Services, and so that'd be Lars Ewing for county. The Water Resources obviously we provide consults and information to the public about the status of boat ramps, but we actually don't manage the boat ramps, those structures on the lake. Those are through the Parks Department because they are through the Division of Boating and Waterways where they originally were funded, and the building was supported. So that's that current status. You want to contact those departments, and I don't have a status update on those. Do you, Will?
No, just the fact that we have looked into it, and it's a lot more difficult than just extending a boat ramp or putting in more concrete into the lake. Many of you guys know how shallow our lake is, especially here in Lakeport. It actually gets shallower a little farther from the boat ramp due to some boating activities. Power loading actually kind of creates a little hump right after the boat ramp. So a lot of the boat ramps sediment would need to be removed from the lake to actually extend the ramp. And that's a much more difficult permitting process and procedure than just extending a boat ramp. So it's a lot more difficult than some people would think. But again, like Angela said, it's run through the Parks Department, not Water Resources.
Great, thanks, Will. Last question really quick. Is there a way to report dilapidated lakebed structure? Should they just contact you for that?
Yeah, they can contact me, send me pictures, any additional information for property owner, how it's being managed, or if there's any additional resource damage like dumping or discharge or pollution related to the property. Yeah, you can send that to my contact information.
Great, thanks, Will. So I just want to remind everybody, I'm going to share my screen here and talk about some upcoming events really quickly. But I just want to remind everybody that we really rely on your comments and feedback for these events. So if there's any way that we can improve what we're doing for Water Quality Wednesday, if there's a specific topic that you want to hear about, please fill out the evaluation. I put the link in the chat, and I also put it in the chat for the Facebook. So if you're going back and you want to see this and you want to provide some feedback, you can go to the Facebook stream for County of Lake, and you can get the evaluation link there to send us some feedback. And then I just want to let you know some upcoming events that are related to Shorelines. We are going to take a break from Water Quality Wednesday over the summer. We'll be back in the fall, probably October. And if there's anything specific you want, please email, call, or message us at Water Resource Department. You can find us at Facebook at Lake County Water. And you can always call us at 707-263-2344. And I think we definitely will have one coming up that talks about water quality in Clear Lake, climate change, and wildfire impacts. That is definitely on my radar for fall. We have a lot of information we're putting together, and that'll be ready for Fall Water Quality Wednesday. And then there's a great event. Coastal Cleanup Day will be September 17th this year. It's from 9 to 12 on that day. It's usually like the third Saturday of the month. And we've had events, Coastal Cleanup Day events here for the many years. And we always pick up so much trash from our shorelines, our beaches. And so last year, this map shows some of the locations where we had events. And it'll be kind of similar this year, but there's going to be some new areas. They're not on the map yet. But if you go to the Coastal Commission, California Coastal Commission, and watch our Facebook page, you can get the information about where this event will be and where the closest spot is for you to help us participate in cleaning up our shorelines, both in our creeks and on our lake. So this is a great way for you to actually get your hands dirty and help us clean up some of this trash so we don't have it in our lake. And then we always have some great partners here, so we want to acknowledge them here at the bottom. Last thing is there is a Tule Festival this year. It's been hiatus for the last couple years due to wildfire and then COVID. So this is the Big Valley Tule Boat Festival. So if you really want to get a close hand look about how shorelines and tules are really important to our Native Indigenous populations, this is a great way to do that, as well as learn about vendors and other activities going around the lake. So this will be on July 21st to the 23rd. And this is at Big Valley Rancheria. And so, yeah, this theme this year is recovery, resilience, and cultural survival. And it's just really exciting to have this event back this year and to learn all about the Tule boats. So thank you so much for joining us at Water Quality Wednesday. Again, please enter the information into the evaluation and the feedback form so we can improve these events. Again, thank you to our speakers, Emma and Will. Thanks to the tech staff for helping us stay late tonight. I hope everybody has a great evening, and reach out to us if you have any questions about shorelines in Clear Lake. Thank you so much, and hope everybody has a good evening.